Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap. It is Wednesday. It is the 3rd of April. We started to run, and then we decided not run, at least today. Very mixed day in the market here today. No two ways about that. And for some reason, I can't get this to come up so I can see the chat. So I'm going to try one more time and see if that will work. This is a new one. It's been a while since I've had some technical difficulties, and so why not? But for some reason, I hope I'm live. It says I'm live. Hello, and I hope everybody had a great day both in and out of the market. If you are with me, if you're not, you're catching this recording later. Well, I'm not sure what's going on, and I do apologize for that. Yeah, for whatever reason, I am not seeing the chat. I am on a completely different screen. I'm going to give it a try in a minute, see what's going on there. But hopefully you are all here and you all had a great day in the market. We gapped up on the open, started to move a little bit on hopes of a trade deal being done. We've heard that before, but ultimately did sell off a little bit off of the highs, kind of closing pretty flat for the most part. We did see really nice movement in the material sector, though, as we will see as we get into the ETF, no doubt about that. On the earnings front, you do have Constellation Brands coming out with earnings here tomorrow before the open, an S&P 500 company in Constellation Brands. Very light overall on the earnings. That is our last, I believe, S&P 500 company for this week coming out here. So we got another week and a half before we start getting into the earnings side of things. So taking a look at the S&P 500 on the open, we had that nice gap on the optimism of a trade deal, and just we really started moving. Things were going pretty smooth. You saw a lot of movement in the semiconductors, AMD, of course, kind of leading the charge over there. But about the midway point of the trading day, just started to see it drift to the downside as not all, but a lot of those profits started to get drifting away from traders. We did hold the breakout point, at least in my opinion, we did on that daily chart. So that is a positive. A little bit of weakness on that 15-minute chart, though. If we look at it more from an hourly perspective, we're kind of testing the breakout point, hanging out right between those rising moving averages, those hourly 9, hourly 20. So I don't really think it's a huge concern just yet, at least, but definitely a little bit of a doji type of day. When we see that type of price action, of course, there on the intraday, that usually means we are going to end up with a doji on the daily, and that is exactly what we saw here today. It's that with the S&P 500. So I don't know if we know much more today than we did yesterday. Holding the breakout, I do think is a positive, and I do think that we have to give the bulls that one. A little bit slowing down, though. Would have liked to see a little bit more follow through after yesterday's move, but we didn't. It wasn't all for nothing. We actually saw some pretty good movement closing above 7,500 over in the NASDAQ. And hey, there we go. The market recap is finally coming up on my other screen here. And hello, everybody, officially. I'll be able to see you in a second. Hey, it's good to see you guys. It was not allowing me to see you. I've never had that one happen before. I will just say thank you, trading gods, for making it work. So I make sure I wasn't talking to myself, which wouldn't be the first, probably won't be the last time. And hello, everybody. I hope you had a great day. Over in the NASDAQ, again, tech has been very strong. We really saw good movement in the semiconductors today. So no huge surprise that tech kind of led the way, or at least the NASDAQ kind of led the way in our indexes, taking out that previous swing high. Little bit of a doji, again, very similar, maybe not as extreme price action on the NASDAQ, but we did see, pretty much everything come off of its highs about the midway point of the trading day. We're above everything, no real resistance until we work into Exactly, Tanner. It was due. So until we work into that 77, I would expect that it's not going to be a straight shot 277, a consolidation or a pullback between here and there would probably make the most sense. Technically, we're starting to, get a little bit away from support, but still very bullish, in my opinion, overall within the NASDAQ. The Dow just continues to smack its head into resistance, and at least today just really haven't decided one way or another. We have to give it credit. It would be really easy to sell here. Right at a major resistance level, we continue to hold up. We need somebody to say, yeah, I'm willing to buy at resistance. That somebody isn't me by any means, but not terribly surprising. This was a big level of resistance, right? We looked at swing highs in the NASDAQ and things like that. We always will respect resistance, but I mean, this is a pretty big battle. This is probably the biggest one going on in our indexes right now, in my mind, at least. Today, not a lot of clarity. We're running out of week, so it would be okay if we want to spend a few more days before breaking out on Monday. That would be all right by me. Hey, Marcelo, good to see you, my friend. But not a whole lot has changed here. Still above everything, positive momentum. Nothing really to see here, just as the battle at resistance continues. Over in the Russell, again, we're working closer. Get really close into that previous swing high. You could maybe even argue that we actually kissed it. I don't think we quite got there, but it's a matter of tiny points, so not a huge debate worth having. Most importantly, I think it's safe to say we didn't break that resistance level here today, at least on the Russell. Just a lot of overhead. That hasn't changed. The other indexes much prefer a break on the Dow. Already much prefer the NASDAQ and the S&P. Not a lot has changed. I'm still looking at this more overall neutral than bullish. I am coming off of that every day, and certainly if we break this resistance, I think, for my rules, I have to put it back into at least a neutral territory. Haven't broke that resistance yet. This should be an interesting one. And the problem with a chart like this is you break one, you get another. You break that one, you get another. So 1600 continues to be the overall area that I'm keeping an eye on over in the Russell. So not a lot has changed on the index front, in my opinion. Strong movement in tech, starting to get a little bit away from support. So, if we do see some profit taking late week, wouldn't be a terrible thing or a bad thing or anything like that. Over in the material sector, boy, they filled up that space. We talked and we looked for a long time. We've been talking about that 56 resistance, of course, taking it out cleanly yesterday and really just zipping right up to that next level, kissing it on the intraday. This is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. We do have a fair amount of price history in this ballpark, in the mid 57s, 57.50 range. So we'll want to keep an eye on that. Very strong signal overall, in my opinion. I'm not surprised that is where we saw some profit taking, especially with the market kind of doing a little profit taking itself, but very good movement over in the material sector. I don't expect this to be a huge level of resistance, but I do think we should respect it as a potential profit taking zone. If we can push through, I mean, there's room, there's a reason that we, at least I like the material sector. There's room, a lot of good looking trending stocks within this sector. Good solid signal today as far as the overall strength of the sector, in my opinion, at least. I'll now be watching this old resistance to be our primary support level. If we need to consolidate, if we need to pull back a little bit, that won't scare me, at least not right now. That was definitely today's winner, though. I mean, a clear winner in the materials sector. Probably could argue they held up the best on that intraday sell-off as well. Then you get to our friends in energy, which basically it feels like, the Bill Murray Groundhog Day movie over and over and over. Still in that range, not a lot of clarity. Saw some selling over there, a little bit of weakness today on the intraday within this sector, but I have a hard time saying that it means much. We're still very much within this trading range, in my opinion. And until we come out of it, I have to be the boring guy that says, we're here again, still within this trading range between approximately $65 and approximately $67. Ultimately, it's just going to take as long as it takes. And, I've talked about this before, but some of the you who may be joining us more recently, we really saw energy go through a very similar pattern last year, where it basically between February and March, after a ton of selling in January, by the way, with the overall market, really went into a very sideways range, had a heck of a time getting out of that trading range, meant the better part of 2 months oscillating back and forth in a pretty tight, in my opinion at least, trading range before breaking out. It'll break when it's ready. I wish it was ready now. I do like a break to the upside if we in fact get one, but today is not that day. I don't expect tomorrow to be that day either. We still very much find us in this trading range, and really from a signal perspective, I think you have to be careful because your natural biases can lead you to, well, I like it. I'm looking for a bullish breakout. Fair enough that that's what I'm looking for, but my biases make me want to see that, right? Whereas maybe Tanner's looking for a bearish breakdown. Got to be careful not to let those biases get you either. So while we're in this range, we just have to be boring, I guess, or cash flowing. It's been a great place to cash flow as of late with that sideways action, no doubt about that. First real test in financials is coming up. We work back into that 200 period moving average here today on a very mixed day, much like the market, took a run and then kind of sold off of it. I think at this point, overall, we got to be a little bit cautious with the financial sector, not bearish necessarily. A lot of the big banks have worked kind of back into their old trading ranges, where a lot of those regional banks are challenging, moving averages and swing, old support levels. So I'm not ready to be excited about the financial sector yet. Personally, I think this is really the first challenge that we've had this week, at least after we really just kind of flew through all those moving averages here the other day. I do expect the 200 to be at least a little bit of resistance for the sector as a whole. Still, for the most part, I'm unchanged. I still remain, slightly bullish for everything that's not bank related. Bank related, it's either neutral for me or bearish. I'm still looking at potentially some selling or retracement opportunities within the regional banks. I don't think they are set up just yet. They probably at least need one more day, and they may never set up the right way for it. But right now, with us being at resistance, a little bit of an area I think I'm going to be a little bit cautious on as we kind of close the week out. If this pushes us down, that may start pushing down some of those weaker stocks like those regional banking stocks. So I'm going to be thinking about that at least as I'm working into the last couple of days of this trading week. Over in industrials, so we saw some moves today, no doubt. I didn't catch the CTXS. We'll take a peek at them here. Yeah, they're tech. They can move. We'll take a peek at them when we get into tech. Marcel, always excited to look at something that's moving. Industrials working very, very, very close. I mean, we got to 77.96. So I'm going to call that 77. That is close enough for me, especially knowing this is probably more a range than a number. We did make a nice run at that resistance, did sell off of it, whether it was because it was resistance, because the market was selling off, because some of these individual stocks might be a little overextended. I don't know. We could argue any or all of those things. I think the important thing is we're still battling that resistance zone. And for at least another day that wins, we've talked about it a lot. That is a pretty fair amount of history, and that certainly can impact the individual components within this sector. So I do think we want to continue to be mindful of that 77. Break above it, I'll call it a bullish signal, still overall bullish on this sector. Of course, we're now showing pretty good movement. Hard to make a strong bearish argument, but if we're going to make it, at resistance is probably the place to do so. So I don't think that, for me, not looking at it overall bearish by any means, but I do expect it to be difficult with the amount of price action that we've had in this $77 range. Not terribly surprising. And good afternoon to you, Thiago. Good to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure to see Thiago. Always a good time. Over in tech, leading the charge, materials did beat it today. Materials were the clear percentage winner, at least on the day, but tech was not terribly far behind, as I think we technically hit a new all-time high on the ETF. It was close. I don't think it closed it. I don't think you'd call it a break, but I do think you have to tip your hat to the strength of the sector nonetheless. Just continues to be an absolute rock star for the bulls right now, while other areas have taken little breaks or given signs of weakness from time to time, or or maybe just struggling at resistance. We've really just seen tech continue to just defy expectations over and over, or at least live up to them fairly nicely. So continues to be a very nice area. We are seeing that. Let's go take a look at that Citrix Systems. Let's see what they did today. Oh yeah, that was a weird day. So they've been hanging at this support. You can kind of see this is something I've kind of had my eye on for a while, with all of the support that they've been forming for a breakdown. Still waiting for that. I don't know what the heck happened here today. Goldman hired Goldman for a potential sale, and that's going to weird me out. I'm going to have to take that off of the list. That's why I couldn't imagine, when they had a big move, Marcel, because I was, I've been waiting for that support break, and they should have come up in my alerts on a support break, but that's why it went the other way. That is going to put these guys, for me, that's a little increased volatility. And with that sale news may or may not mean anything, but it could lead to a little more increased volatility, which, me, I'm not the type of dude who likes a whole lot of action and adventure when it comes to trading. So I am going to continue to watch it, but that will probably scare me away from it. That's crazy movement over there, no doubt about it. I want to take a quick peek at some of the big companies within this sector to kind of see where they're at. You've got Microsoft hitting all-time highs. We're starting to get a little extended in the sector. Apple still has a little bit of room to run, closing in on that recent swing high. Visa just continues to do what Visa does, which apparently is just go up. So Intel, a nice bounce back after getting a little bit choppy here recently. Certainly a very good day today. Now, it was a good day in the semis, so certainly that didn't hurt Intel. We are approaching an all-time high resistance zone on Intel, something we probably want to keep our eyes on. Cisco just continues to be Cisco. And if Visa just goes up, I don't even know how you explain Cisco, since their earnings break has just been an absolute rock star. So still seeing a lot of really strong looking trends. Maybe they're not our textbook entries, going into tomorrow or the next day. But I do think as we look at the components within the sector, it really goes to show how strong some of these technology stocks are looking. Staples, on the other hand, continued to pull back. You did get hit with a little bit of fear in the tobacco stocks. You had Altria, Philip Morris, both down here today on, reports that vaping, I guess I'm too old to vape, causes seizures. There were somewhere around 36 reports out there. I don't know how legit it is, or if it isn't, or if it's speculation, or if it's proven fact, but it did certainly impact those tobacco stocks here today. Of course, as components, starting to see a little bit more weakness, especially with them breaking down. I think it was Philip Morris. We saw Philip Morris just absolutely fall through every moving average, kind of hanging on by a thread at old support. So that's Altria, and then Philip Morris, very, very similar as far as, falling right back below that support level. Have to worry a little bit, lower highs, lower lows maybe developing. So a little bit of weakness in some of the individual components, a little bit more than maybe we expected to see. And maybe this news will blow over. I'm not going to freak out about it, but it can, of course, impact the sector as a whole. If we look at these guys kind of on an intraday level, they're still very much so in the sell mode. So if you are looking at this sector from a retracement point of view, and overall, I still am, just maybe not quite as excited as I was even yesterday. I still am looking for that opportunity, even on a 15-minute time frame, still on the very bearish side of things, falling below all of those moving averages. So no real reason. We all know that anything can happen tomorrow, but no real reason to think tomorrow is the day that we're just going to completely turn it around based off of that 15-minute chart. Still a little bit of bearishness in the hourly chart as well. Have yet to even break that hourly 9 EMA throughout the course of this pullback. So as we're looking ahead, probably, for me at least, it's probably looking like this is more of a next week thing at this stage of the game. Pretty much right now, the bears are in control. Price-wise, I'd love to see it work into this 20-day moving average. And so, WBA's weakness yesterday, the tobacco stocks, getting hit pretty hard today, that isn't going to keep me away from bullish retracement opportunities here next week. But I think for me, at least, it's looking like that's almost where it has to be. I always have to have a perfect candle tomorrow to even start to think that the pullback was ready to get into on Friday. So my expectations are pullbacks will be interesting on Friday as I'm scanning within this sector, but probably not a lot of new trades. at the end of the week within that sector. More back and forth over in the utility. Looks like it's trying to establish some support. Now we have to deal with these moving averages. We are seeing this 9 cross below the 20, which isn't a huge thing, but puts a little bit of extra technical pressure on it in my mind. Want to see it get some upward movement. If you look at it on more of a shorter term time frame, much like yesterday, it's still just going sideways, trying to hold that 200 hourly. It did break it for a moment today, but of course, a moment is just a moment. A close is what matters, at least to me. Still trying to get turned around. I think again, it's one of those things that the pullback is there. It is intriguing to me. We all know how strong this sector has been, but need to see some faith, I guess, and certainly not seeing it on the daily chart, not really seeing it on the hourly chart. I can see the fight and I can see the bulls are willing to hold it up, but I don't think we're seeing the folks jump into, we've seen this time and time again on utilities where any excuse to buy utilities has been a good excuse, right? And my expectations are that will maintain to be true a little bit down the road, but I don't think it's there yet for me. 57 is the line in the sand, so I'm not overly concerned from a bullish point of view, certainly not bearish, but not loving the development. I would have liked to have seen a little bit cleaner retracement develop, especially these last couple of days. Yesterday, with yesterday's candle, a nice little hammer, seeing some upward movement today really could have made some of those charts look interesting. Now they're starting to get a little bit deeper on the pullback front than I would personally like. I like more shallow pullbacks. I'm not a deep pullback guy because they scare me because they're breaking support or they're, breaking moving average, even though they're not necessarily breaking pivots or trends. I'm more of a more shallow type of retracement guy. Over in healthcare, just continues to be the story of the month with healthcare. Continues to be very back and forth, and I expect that it will continue to do so. We've looked many times at the different components within the sector. And right now, you had, Humana put in a new low, when I was doing the, who hit new lows today over on the Tackle Twitter, it was Humana. They're still hanging at support, but they are, hanging at support, certainly no great signs of buying. You had WBA, and while they are technically in the staples sector, they certainly can, have a little bit to do with the healthcare sector. And who was it? CI was the other one that put in a new low. Still, we looked, I think, at these guys yesterday. If we didn't, let's look at them again. Really ugly chart. And so they continue to be very, very mixed. And I think you have to continue to be very careful trying to say that the sector is going to do one thing or the other with how much divergence we have within the individual components. Then we have our old friends in the discretionary. Another really good day for these guys, cleanly taking out that 115, working all the way into the 116 and change mark. Really nice movement overall within the sector. I'm going to definitely look at that as yet another bullish signal. I still feel that we have room to run into that 118 range. Again, preferably all in one setting, but practically probably not. So I'm going to hope for that. Doesn't hurt to ask, but I wouldn't be surprised if we need to pull back a little bit, whether it's to that 115, to those moving averages, to this swing high, or just consolidate a little bit. Again, not specifically tomorrow, but we are starting to extend in some of these really strong areas that we've seen as of late. For me, in particular, the discretionary and the technology sector. So we are starting to get a little bit away from home on some of those short-term moving averages, but just another really good day within this sector. I continue to like this sector. I probably will continue to like this sector in the week to come, maybe even like it more than anybody else around here, but we shall see. I'm going to call this a break of 115 is just another reason for bullish optimism overall within the sector, though, as I really like that sector right now, and certainly been very good movement within that sector as of late. Over in real estate, not a whole lot to see here. This is often the case with real estate. Just dips down a little on the intraday and buyers just step right back in. It makes it fairly difficult for new swing trading entries maybe, but overall the strength of the sector kind of speaks for itself. So as much as I'd like something clever to say about it, I don't really have anything clever to say about it other than it continues to show great strength and resiliency overall in the real estate sector. Not a terrible place to be, no doubt about it. Weird day in the communication services, and we did break resistance, and we had a really good run. When things were looking good, things were looking good. You saw the same thing happen on Facebook. It actually looks eerily similar, as it often does, where we broke out, probably technically yesterday, or we're knocking on the door. Upward movement definitely got us there today, really got running, and then really sold off more than the overall market, certainly in my mind at least. Little more weakness on the intraday. I don't know what to make about it. I think you could argue, we're still right in that breakout point within the sector as a whole, within Facebook, specifically. But that intraday movement is a little concerning. You guys know that this is an area that I've not been right necessarily, but I've been shying more away from than some of the other areas. And quite honestly, I expect that to continue as the week finishes up. And I didn't like the way that Facebook broke. I mean, it was a great run. I wish I would have been in it early, but I don't like how everybody took profits. And, if it held that breakout, it did it by a hair. And again, we all know how important Facebook and Google both are to this ETF. So the signals are still there. We are still seeing bullish signals, in my opinion. If I had to, make a call, I would continue to overall look at it from a bullish point of view. I think you have to call the break of 48 a good bullish signal. Just because I didn't like the price action on the breakout doesn't mean it didn't happen. It does still. I still don't trust that area, and at least for me, when I look at these other areas, whether it's materials, in the technology sector, potentially a break in the industrial, so many other things that feel better behaved, feel like I have a better handle on them. And so whether I'm a moron or a genius, I don't know, but I'll always go with what's comfortable. I'll always encourage other people to go with what is comfortable. I just think there's better areas out there right now, but the signals continue to be there, right? Yeah, I saw that Yeti did that too. One day, I'll have to tell you one of our old World of Warcraft stories about a character named Yeti, but that's a story for another day, Tanner. So we had, Matt, Tim, my brothers, Mark, we've all played some video games together. So we have some pretty embarrassing stories that they probably would rather I didn't share. But, you guys know me, I don't really get embarrassed very easily. Thank goodness, because, well, I have lots of reason to get embarrassed almost every day just using technology. So, but as we look at the sector, just continue to keep an eye on how Google and Facebook perform. If you are new around here and haven't followed this sector a lot, they're very big components of it. So they have a major influence on how this chart looks. So, I mean, really, I think today didn't tell us a whole lot. We tried to run. We even started to run. The first little while in the S&P, we were moving, and it looked like today might be the day that the Dow was going to break. But we did an about face pretty quickly, closing pretty flat. Now, a lot of these areas are extended, so pullbacks, it's not a bad thing, But I think maybe with the price action today, maybe expecting a pullback is too strong of a word, but mentally preparing for one is probably not, at least for me. As we move into the VIX, did see a little bit of a spike today with kind of the about face in the market. Would make a little sense. Still relatively low, but I think a little more volatile today than maybe some traders would have liked. I don't think there's a lot to see there yet out of that. Just might have been the way that the day played out. Certainly not going to freak out about it, but a little more volatility on the intraday than maybe I would have preferred personally. Over in the dollar, after yesterday's gravestone, we did make a lower high and a lower low here today. We saw quite a bit of selling once we did take out that low. This has been so rangy that, while I've not been doing anything about it, and probably to my detriment, in hindsight at least, a lot of traders have been trading very, effectively between this 97.50 and the 96 range, give or take, wherever they're actually getting in. So not terribly surprising, I don't think, that we saw, some selling step in once we started to see some sell signals generated on the intraday or closing in on the top of the trading range. My expectations, are that it's going to work its way back down. Because that's what it's been doing. I'm not really interested in trading within the range, so I guess it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong for me, I guess, because I'm still waiting for the break as the signal. But if I were trying to trade it back and forth, and I don't know if the signals to get in are there just yet, but my expectations will be go with what's been happening. Those are always my expectations, and I think that's the right way to think about trading. Beyond that, I might be wrong. My expectations are my own. You may not agree with them. I don't think the pullback, if we're looking at the dollar for a pullback opportunity, probably need to see it simmer down a little bit. I think right now, for the most part, the bears have kind of wrestled, at least short-term speaking, some control with that resistance above us. I think we just have to assume that they're going to win. For me, again, you guys know I'm waiting for a break to the upside as a signal, kind of going into the rest of the year, basically. And I'll continue to be as patient as I need to be to see that signal. But closing in at the top of the range, probably shouldn't be surprised if it does see at least some profit taking. We got a little room. I mean, some folks could use it as an opportunity in the days to come for a pullback. And I would get it. I just wouldn't agree with it. Over in gold, a lot of nothing to see here, as this continues to be a very difficult swing traders chart, in my opinion. Very sideways. If we can get another week like this, where we have a floor and a ceiling, and then maybe break one way or the other, maybe we could talk about something short term. I don't really expect that to be the case. For me, nothing has changed. 1280 as support, 1325 as resistance, and the only other real strong case we could make is this 13 as an old resistance level is our current level of resistance. I expect it to continue to struggle a little bit in the short term. Don't think the clear sell signals are there for me, and that won't be generated until we're below 1280, at least with where we are today. So continues to be an area that I'll wait. I will wait and see, because I think you could try to convince yourself one way or another. Bet on 1280 holding or bet on 13.25 holding. It's a lot of wiggle room either way, and that's not a bet that I like to make. Over in silver, continues to behave very volatilely at this old support zone, at this $15 mark. This is an important price, in my opinion. Nothing to see here today. We're seeing it hold up. Folks are willing to buy. When we get down to approximately 15, you are seeing those intraday traders come back in. We've seen it for 5 days in a row now, basically within that over here in the silver world. But I'm not one of them by any stretch of the imagination. I would imagine their logic is, we'll buy it here. If it breaks, we hit a stop loss, take a small loss. That's what my logic would be if I were one of them. And so if we do break and close below that support level, I'll absolutely call it a bearish signal. Hasn't happened here yet today. I have 15.25 as kind of the first real level of resistance, followed by 1550. Just a ton of overhead, numbers, moving averages, intraday highs. It would be very difficult for me to make a case that I could even try to convince myself on within silver today that it's bullish. Over in natural gas, we did take a peek at this little kiss goodbye that we saw developing on the hourly here yesterday. It actually followed through pretty nicely on the short term. This is about where we were here yesterday, testing that old support after kind of hitting the same top out area. Pushed us down a little bit further as we're just kind of hanging by a thread after breaking through that support level. So it's not been a very violent drop. We kind of established a little bit of an intraday floor, as you can kind of see here, and you saw on that hourly chart. We'll come back to it here. A little bit of an hourly floor developing. If that floor gives out, I do expect it to probably try to work back down to the floor that we set up back in February. Now, I'm not interested in trading it. I'm definitely not interested in trying to trade it going into the weekend if that's the way that it goes. We continue to fall below that 9. That 9 continues to fall, continues to push us lower and lower and lower. Not a great look. I'm not really interested in natural gas. Wouldn't mind it pulling back all the way to support and then taking another run at resistance, because I do believe still it hasn't changed enough that a break above resistance is a good signal, in my opinion. We're a ways away from it. I don't expect it to even happen, but I still would call it a decent signal if we, spend the next couple of weeks working our way back up into it and then ultimately were to break through it. So a little bit of intraday support holding us together, not a lot. If that intraday support gives out, there really isn't much until we test those old bottoms. So while I don't really think there's enough room to try to trade there directionally personally, I also see that there's a little bit of space for us to try to fill up. And of course, over in crude, not a lot to see here today. EIA numbers coming in. I generally don't care all that much about what they are because, well, as Matt and Tim constantly say, they're never right. So I'm always interested in how the price action responds. Obviously, it can make a big deal. It's a big deal on a very short-term time frame. You can see some very increased volatility on those 1, 2, 3, 5-minute charts when the report comes out. I don't really think it's impacted our daily chart one way or the other. A little bit of a doji holding above the 200-day moving average. Everything still looks good. It is a little extended to the upside. And while we don't really have a lot of resistance, in my opinion at least, until the 64 marker, so we still have some room to go. If it needs a little breather in the form of a retracement or a consolidation period, that would make sense. We have moved quite a bit for crude over the course of just a week. I mean, we bottomed out at about 58, just north of 58 when we tested support, working all the way up into the mid 62s. That's a little bit fast. It's not that crude can't do that. We all know that crude can move quickly, but usually it's not moving quite that fast. So I would expect, or I wouldn't be surprised if we do need to take a little breather, whatever specifically that means. As far as support goes, if we do see a pullback develop, I'll be looking at 60 as a potential support zone, the rising 9, the 200, even the rising 20. So there's a lot of catalysts that could ultimately develop as support with where we are here today. On the other side of things, it is very strong. I'm not going to be surprised if tomorrow we're talking about it, knocking on the door of 64. It does have a lot of overall momentum, but a little doji today. Certainly saw a little bit of profit taking, folks not jumping in quite as quickly, but I absolutely still am comfortable looking at it working into the 64. Just whether it's on this particular swing, I'm a little on the fence. In my head, it feels like it needs a pullback, but that doesn't mean my head's right? That just means I'm kind of a wimp. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for today. But, just kind of an interesting day, yet kind of a nothing day in the market. It was kind of one of those things. I think we don't really think it gave us any real reason to change our biases one way or the other for the most part. We do have, industrials challenging resistance. I think at least we have financials challenging resistance as well. Materials, while we have a lot of momentum, we are dealing with the previous price point. But you have, things like, technology with hitting new highs or knocking on the door. You have the discretionary sector that, in my eyes at least, still has room to run before we start to work into some resistance. So I think overall it's going to continue to be a little bit of a stock picker's market. It's been a pretty good, well-behaved market this week, I believe at least. Hopefully it can continue to do so. Little disappointed that it wasn't, so quick to give back all of the gains in some of those tech stocks, some of those semiconductor stocks here today, but can't complain too much. When AMD won't close 12% above after up on the day after an upgrade, that, hey, let's call it what it is. You'll take it, but it's luck. So, would have liked to see things, hold some of those highs a little bit better. But ultimately, there was profit taking in the market today. Whether there was anything more than that, I guess that's up to us to decide and time to tell. But we saw it pretty much across the board, so not overly concerning to me. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll do us. But as always, thank you so much for joining. It's always great hanging out with you guys. It was great to be able to see you. I know I was going to worry that it was all for naught and I was just going to hang out here and talk to myself. But I'm glad that you guys are here. It's always more fun to do this with you than on my own. So thank you so much for joining me. If you are new around here, of course, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so we can be alerted to any new videos or streams that we've got going on over here. Follow us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter. You, of course, can find me at FrankMartin23 on Twitter as well if you're ever looking for me. Let's see. If you have anything that you want to me to bring to the scouting report meeting on Friday, if you have a great looking trade setup that you want me to go fight for when I go to the scouting report meeting on Friday, just bring it to my attention on Friday afternoon. I'm not afraid to steal another trader's trade ideas, and if it's a great trade setup, no one else is either. So if you have anybody or any stocks in your watch list you think yeah, these are really good setups and want to talk them over, try to defend them, I will certainly be happy to listen to them. Kind of thinking maybe one thing that we can do in the days to come is maybe put together just a small recap game watch list that we keep an eye on together on a regular basis as well. So kind of if you have some stocks that you do like, kind of keep that in mind, trying to figure out how to do it and keep it in a reasonable time frame so I don't keep you guys any longer than I have to, but hopefully we can come up with something that will work there. Of course, if you like the recap, guys, it is always helpful and appreciated if you give it a thumbs up, and thank you in advance for that. So hey, you guys are all very welcome. Thank you for stopping by, pro members. Enjoy the Tackle 25 Mastermind group tonight. Should be a lot of fun with Tyler and is it Noah and Matt, or Tyler and Matt? I think it's Noah and Matt. Yeah, those guys. Well, you guys know how they get in trouble when it's just the two of them. So have fun over there. I'll see you guys same time and channel here tomorrow afternoon. So I'm looking. If I'm in, John, on crude, I'm probably okay, probably pulling up a stop a little bit if the pullback's a little deeper than I like. For a new entry, I probably would be looking for a pullback. So if it's an existing trade, I'm probably willing to let some of the profits run for better or worse, for right or wrong, maybe pull the stop loss up a wee bit. For a new entry, I think with where it is, I'd want to see at least a little bit of a pullback or a short-term consolidation before I look to jump into it. So, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but that is kind of how I would look at it, John. So, all right. Hey, thank you, Ed. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody. Always great to see you guys. You guys have a fantastic Wednesday afternoon. Get out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.